guys, welcome back to my channel. So I get asked all the time what type of makeup I use that is clean, organic, non-toxic, because it seems like every makeup brand has titanium dioxide in it, which is a known carcinogen. So I use the brand 100% Pure. I typically use their Bamboo foundation. This one's way too dark for my skin tone right now. I bought it in mind with going to Florida, so that one's gonna have to wait. But I like using this Fruit Pigmented Cream Foundation. But I have the shade Golden Peach. It's kind of different from a typical foundation because it's not like the liquid, so it's kind of weird to get used to. So I'll go in with like this brush, and then I love the Live Botanicals skincare line. And before I found out about like toxic makeup, I would just put setting spray on here, and now I just spray this in to get like some moisture. Thought I'd do a little Q&A also because I get questions all the time, and some of them I don't get to because I just feel like they're way too long to get to every single one of them on Instagram when they're asked. So the first one was tampon recommendations. I personally don't use tampons. I never really have. The first time that I used a tampon was in college, and my best friend at the time had to like sit me down and show me how to use it. I just always felt like they were uncomfortable, and I just don't think that we're supposed to have stuff shoved up inside of us, in my honest opinion, while we're bleeding. I think we're meant to like bleed to like cleanse for a reason in a way. I prefer, I guess, what you would call free bleeding, which you basically just, I like the NYX period panties. I like the Bamboo pads that you can get, and they're reusable, so you just like wash them. And I've used those twice now, and I really like them. They don't stain, so I'll typically wear it and then wash them when I need to like reuse it again, and then throw it in the dryer, like hand wash it, throw it in the dryer, and then when I'm finished with my cycle, do like a full big wash in the washing machine. That's just my personal preference. I know that a lot of people like don't want to like sit like that all day, but I just feel like that's what's the most natural and safest way. Did your whole family move to Georgia? What about the family business? So we've had the house up in Georgia, in North Georgia, ever since I was a kid, and my grandfather bought it, and then after he passed, my dad just wanted to keep it in the family, so we kept it in the family. When I was in college and my brother was in boarding school, it just kind of turned into like a halfway point, like easier to come here than driving all the way down to Naples. So my mom actually moved up here. She lives in the next town over. And then my dad has still been living at his parents' house. The house actually is so close to being finished. I think we're just waiting on the cabinets and some other shelves. And then he's going to move in. I think he's already started the process of moving in, so I'm going to be going back down super soon. But the business is fine. We're kind of thriving again, getting everything up and running. It's just so, it was so, just such a weird thing to happen because like everything was lost. Like we have a tow truck business, so all the tow trucks were completely gone. Like they were all under 6 feet of water. Mostly all the rental cars were gone, like all the equipment, all the paint booth stuff, which back in the day was X amount of money, and now it's like triple, quadruple amount of money from what it was when he first started like almost 50 years ago. So it's just so crazy to see like everything has to be completely rebuilt, completely redone. I haven't been in Naples since December. That was the last time I went down, and everything was still just like slowly getting rebuilt. mean, we took a hard hit. We took a very hard hit there. So that's just like, it's just such a weird thing to have happen. Like, I was so lucky that we have another house to go to so that we all weren't like packed on top of each other at my grandparents' little house, but it's still such just like a weird experience to even think like nothing is really the same. I don't know. And then like you have all the tourists that come down and they're like, what can we do this weekend? And it's like when it was like when the hurricane was going on, there were tourists that were like asking in the Facebook groups like, hey, what's going on this weekend? We're like, everything's closed. Like, everything got destroyed. Like, what do you can come down and help, but like it's just like people like that just have been like so inconsiderate, and I've dealt with like less than a handful of inconsiderate people when it came to the hurricane, and that's what was really crappy to deal with also. Okay, so because this foundation is a little bit lighter than what I normally use, I like using their Cocoa Pigmented Bronzer, and then it's in the shade Cocoa Kissed. So take whatever this brush is called, and I kind of put it mostly on the outside, but I'm kind of gonna go all over just because I want to have a little bit more darker of a complexion. I need to get one of those like nice headbands that cover your hair because my hair will sometimes turn like a little bit bronzy from not having one of those. We get a lot of birth control questions, which is good because that's what we're trying to educate on, is the birth control. Does birth control really damage a woman's ability to sense pheromones or select masculine males? If so, why? Okay, I love this question. So here's the thing with birth control. Birth control, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, is a toxin. The body, specifically the liver, has to work to get rid of those toxins and basically detox them, which is through the liver. And then I like to go on my neck because my neck doesn't hold that much of a tan as much as I would like it to. So when the body needs to detox it, what typically happens is I'm going to use, I love the Fruit Pigmented, it's the Better Naked palette. So I'll use the same brush that I have because I only have like 2 brushes. And then I've never been a blush girl really, but I've really liked blush lately. The body has to work to detox those toxins out of the body, right? So how do we detox? We detox typically through the bile in the liver, which means you poop. Well, when you are taking birth control, a lot of nutrients get depleted. I use this one for the blush, and then this is kind of like a highlight. I like to go on my nose, up on my cheeks a little bit. So when you take birth control, nutrients get depleted, like vitamin C, some of your B vitamins, and zinc. All of those are needed to assist in detoxification. So when you are on birth control, and a majority of Americans are following just a standard American diet, or they think they're eating healthy, but they're really not eating healthy, and those nutrients aren't getting absorbed. If you don't have zinc, a lot of those nutrients aren't going to be getting absorbed on the cellular level anyway, because zinc is needed basically as like that middleman to absorb, especially with digestion. A lot of people that have digestive problems are typically low in zinc or deficient in zinc. When your body's trying to detox these toxins, a lot of women who are on birth control are constipated and have irregular bowel movements anyway, just because, again, we're not getting all the nutrients that we need, because 1, the birth control pill is depleting those nutrients, and 2, the way that our food is manufactured now and the way that soil is processed, we lose a lot of nutrients in the soil just right out the bat to begin with. I will use their long-lasting brow gel. I don't really like having prominent brows anymore, so I'll take my Anastasia little whatever this is and then just like dab it onto some toilet tissue so that it's not as like very jelly, but just to give some color to fill it in because I do have very light eyebrows. We lose a lot of nutrients because of the way that the soil is nowadays anyway, and then the way that the food is processed. Food processing typically removes a lot of the good nutrients like zinc, B6, potassium, magnesium, and they fortify it with iron, copper, and calcium, which in large quantities can actually become dangerous. So we've gotten to this point in society where we think that if we eat all of this calcium or we take all these calcium supplements, we're going to prevent osteoporosis. It doesn't work like that because you need 60 to 65% of the bone is made up of magnesium. Magnesium is typically found in the skeletal system. So if you don't have magnesium, which calcium depletes, if you are not supplementing with enough magnesium, you really just can't get it through your diet anymore, then you are more likely to have osteoporosis. Just using that as an example. I always get little breakouts if I put the brush on my neck. Birth control pumps you full of synthetic hormones such as progestin and estrogen, right? When estrogen rises, copper rises with it. They're antagonistic of each other. Or they work together, I guess I should say. Copper and estrogen are together while zinc and progesterone are together. Does that make sense? So we have copper and estrogen over here and zinc and progesterone over here. When copper and zinc are not in balance and you have too much copper, your zinc is going to be lowered. You're going to be zinc deficient. That's just how it works. We're talking about, like the pheromones, like I'm getting to that point. There's kind of a lot to to dig into before that because they're also interdynamic and it's very complex. When you have too much estrogen, copper rises with it. Copper is known as a very emotional mineral. Copper is needed for many different functions. However, copper needs to be balanced with zinc and with other minerals. Copper just can't be, I see so many people that are like, oh, I'm drinking out of copper bottles and I'm going to use copper dish pans, and you're already getting so much copper through copper pipes, and if you're on birth control, your copper levels are naturally raised and elevated because you are taking estrogen. You don't need that much copper. When a woman is on birth control, they are more than likely copper toxic, and copper toxicity impacts other minerals in the sense that it lowers magnesium, which causes calcium to raise, creating a calcium shell. So when calcium is raised and we have this calcium shell, people will typically feel very withdrawn, isolated, they keep to themselves, they're very emotional, they feel like they have no control, they feel very numb, apathetic. They see the world in a different light. They're very paranoid. That's just one of the many symptoms of copper toxicity. Anxiety, irritability, anger, psychological issues. So a lot of psychological issues that most women have you don't just have them, you have them for a reason, and it's typically because of the synthetic hormones, which then in turn cause you to see the world in a different light, view the world in a different light because your minerals are imbalanced. And then you do choose the wrong partner typically. You choose people who you might not normally choose if you weren't in a state of copper toxicity. You choose people who could be physically abusive, or you choose people like the opposite of you, which just in turn causes so much turmoil and stress to the body. I hope that makes sense. Because the way that it is it's not just copper affects one thing, or the birth control affects one thing. The birth control affects vitamin B6, magnesium. Magnesium affects calcium. Calcium affects magnesium. Sodium increases, potassium decreases. That's the stress. That is what causes people to be put in a state of fight or flight. So when they're on birth control, they're typically more anxious because they don't have enough sodium. They have too much or they don't have enough potassium, they have too much sodium, and then a lot of people are already magnesium deficient, but all these women are probably taking calcium supplements because their doctor told them, well, you need to prevent osteoporosis, so get on calcium supplements. So you're on a calcium supplement, and that's contributing to even more psychological problems because you already have a calcium shell that's built up, which is basically just a wall outside of the cells that calcium creates on its own to prevent other minerals, or basically it creates so that the copper doesn't enter the cells. So we think like, oh, this is what a great way the body is doing. Not necessarily, because then it prevents other vital minerals such as magnesium, which is calming to the nervous system, and potassium to come in and kind of soothe and balance the copper, the sodium, and the calcium in a typical copper toxicity case. So it's kind of confusing because it's not just like one thing is affected, they're all affected. Phosphorus, sodium, potassium, calcium, zinc, manganese, all of these minerals, and then even heavy metals, are all impacted by just one pill, which is crazy to think. Okay, so to basically give you the Cliff Notes version of what I just said, birth control does impact the way that you choose a partner or your pheromones work because it disturbs your mineral system, which is very complex, and having even just one mineral off will throw off the whole body. So when you have estrogen that's rising, copper rises with it. Copper will typically create a calcium shell within a person, which causes paranoia, feelings of like numbness, apathy, very emotional, feeling withdrawn. Like you just feel like you have a wall built up around you. You see the world differently. And then you have like a whole mess of copper toxicity symptoms as well, which I've written a guide on it. So if you think you might have copper toxicity, you can download that free guide. And then it lowers your magnesium, which is calming to the nervous system. So basically taking that one pill could throw everything off because the mineral system is so interdynamic that everything has to be balanced. And if having too much copper impacts the way that you see the world and your emotions and you psychologically, what do you think it's doing to whoever you're trying to choose to like date or marry? Okay, so I have both of their mascaras. This one is the Maracuja oil. I like using this one first. It's kind of a little clumpy. I've had it for a few months, so I probably need to get a new one. But I'll just go in with this one first. Oh, wait, I remember what I like to do. Sometimes I like to take this little brush and go in on my eyelids with some bronzer. I just think it makes it look like super like glowy, dewy, just super cute. Not really a big eyeshadow person, so I really don't know how to do eyeshadow, but I'll just go with the highlighter and then just like tap a little bit on the top there. Not an eyeliner person either. I just don't feel like it looks right on me. So I don't really wear eyeliner. If I wear like false lashes, then I'll like wash this brush off and then go in with like the eyeliner, like tap it on the outside of my eyelid just to give it some like depth, but in my everyday routine, I just don't. Okay, thoughts on the copper IUD since it's not hormonal. I see so many women who go for getting the copper IUD because they don't want the synthetic hormones without understanding that copper will affect your hormones either way, even if it doesn't have synthetic hormones in it. It will affect your hormones because it will lower zinc. It will affect your hormones because it will lower zinc while it increases copper. So doctors will be like, oh, it's like less than 1, microgram or milligram a day that it inserts copper. Over time, that copper accumulates, and because those toxins can't get out of the body quick enough, it becomes toxic to the body, and it gets stored in the liver and the brain, which is what causes a lot of the neurologic problems that come from copper toxicity. And so if that's the case, and you're trying to detox that copper, and then I like to go in with the other mascara, just do it on top, and your liver is not functioning right so that you can poop it out, because the main way that copper dumps out of the body, detoxes out of the body, is through your poop. If it can't, it'll recirculate to another organ, such as the brain, and then cause even more psychological problems from there. Even though the copper IUD is not hormonal, it will cause you to be zinc deficient because of the copper that's going into the body. Zinc and copper work together as like the hormone kind of ratio. So anything that increases estrogen increases copper, and zinc and progesterone work together. So if you have balanced zinc and copper levels along with other balanced minerals like potassium and sodium and calcium and magnesium, you're going to have healthy hormones, happy hormones. If those levels are increased, meaning that you have high copper to low zinc, that's typically a copper toxicity, and you do have hormonal problems. You probably have PMS, PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is basically like, I like to call it PMS on steroids. And then other psychological problems such as anxiety, depression, panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts even. I mean, the list, it really goes on and on and on, because, not just because, and I had somebody say like, oh, this list looks like something like COVID, like you have all these COVID symptoms, and it's not necessarily that. I know it kind of looks like that. The problem, ooh, I got an eyelash in my eyeball. Okay, I got it out. Ow. The problem is not that copper the problem is that the minerals are all interdynamic. So when one is thrown off, everything is thrown off. So even though copper necessarily isn't alone just causing all of these issues, it's because you have calcium excess or high sodium. You see what I'm saying? So it seems like it's like, oh, really? How could copper be causing all these? The mineral system is so interdynamic. It's very complex, and everything gets thrown off if just one is out of balance. That's what a lot of doctors have a hard time understanding, is they think that minerals just don't even matter in general. Well, if minerals don't matter in general, then nobody would be alive. You need minerals to create enzymes, which create thyroid, adrenal, how you respond to stress, your hormones, how you digest food. If you didn't have minerals, you literally wouldn't even be watching this video right now. I'm not a fan of the copper IUD. I don't recommend it because it will cause copper toxicity, more than likely in a woman. And just because it's not hormonal, please keep in mind that just because there's no synthetic forms of estrogen doesn't mean that it's not going to mess with your hormones. It will mess with your hormones on a cellular / enzyme or / mineral level. It will cause you to be zinc deficient. I hope I'm doing a good job explaining this, because I feel like to me now it's just all second nature, and I'm trying to find ways to explain it to people to where it can make sense and it doesn't sound so crazy and complex, but it really is. So it's kind of hard to like grasp it sometimes because there's so many different moving parts. And then I'll go in on my bottom lashes a little bit, and then I'll take the wand, whatever this thing is called, and just kind of like brush them out a little bit so they're not so clumpy. Okay. And then I'll use this one little like lip pencil thing. It's not from 100% Pure, but I'll go in at the bottom. And it's kind of like more of a nudie color. And then I'm obsessed with this color. It's the Rum Nougat lip gloss. Okay, and then I'll sometimes take it and blot so it's not super, and then kind of have to do that number so it doesn't get on your teeth. Okay, and then yeah, so that's my little makeup routine. Very simple, very easy. I love it. I'll link all of the products in the comments below or in the description. That way you can like easy access to it. And yeah,